The VCT Americas Stage 1 playoffs start today, and it's time to do one final power rankings of all of these teams before it starts. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing one final power rankings before the Stage 1 playoffs. I figured this would be a good thing to get out before the playoffs start, because obviously those would have an effect on them. So we're going to be going from bottom to top, and this is mainly just based off of how these teams have played during Stage 1. It's not really based off of who I think is better than each other on paper. It's just how are these teams playing right now to end the stage. So not to waste too much time on the bottom two teams, we have MIBR at number 11 and then we have Furia at number 10. So the only change for these teams is they swap places. MIBR was at number 10 last time I did these power rankings, which was after Super Week. Furia was at number 11, so I figured we move Furia up one just because they won a map against C9 and MIBR did not win a single map. So I figured put these two teams here, it makes the most sense. We'll see if either of these teams can make any crawl up the power rankings for Stage 2, but it is looking like it's not the most likely thing to happen. Moving on to our biggest mover down, and a team that this is a heartbreaker to put them there, and we have Energy at number 9. This is the lowest they've been. We are down 4 spots from after Super Week. With Energy, I don't really know how you fix this. I don't know if a roster change is going to turn this team's season around. I don't know if this stage is just a fluke. Clearly something is wrong about this team, whether it's within their strategies, maybe the personalities on the team, while they might be good friends, maybe don't mix well in a competitive environment. The big question is, what do you do if you're this team's management? Do you make a roster change? But who do you swap out? I'll be going more in depth on a bigger video about Energy, but right now it's just really tough to see them anywhere above number 9 because they looked pretty good to start the split, winning against Loud, albeit a very weakened Loud, and then going on a bit of a win streak, but then crashing and burning, and in the big moment against 100 Thieves where your playoffs are on the line, they just crumble. And if you can't get up for those big moments, then you're just not a good team. So we'll see what happens with them. This team maybe can do something in Split 2, but we'll see. Moving on to number 8, down 2 spots from after Super Week, we have Sentinels. So Sentinels and Energy have kind of been conjoined at the hip during these power rankings throughout this stage. I've had Sen at number 1, Energy number 2. I've had Energy at 5th and Sentinels at number 6. I've even had Energy first at one point and Sentinels at number 2. So they just seem to always be together right now. That's not intentional. It's just both of these teams have not lived up to expectations. Granted, Sentinels did win their last match of the split, but that was against Furia. I don't give teams credit for beating that team, so after they lost to Loud, that bumped them down to the 8th spot because Loud were underperforming going into that game, and that was basically Sentinels playoffs hopes running away from them, so it did drop them down, and then they didn't move up after beating Furia because, again, easy win. And for Sentinels, I think take this time to rest. This team still is very good. I am confident in their chances to make champs. This is still a very good team. I don't think Madrid was a fluke. It's just, it is hard to stay consistent in Valorant, and I think this team is still learning that. And I just felt like I couldn't have had them above number 8. It is the lowest they've been, but with other teams jumping ahead of them and with them losing, it just felt like this is where they should be, but it doesn't feel very right. But again, I just feel like other teams are above them. Moving on to number 7, up 1 spot from after Super Week, we have G2 at number 7. So G2 barely scraped their way into playoffs. They got very lucky from the fact that both Energy and Sentinels underperformed. They only made it into playoffs by having a 2-round differential better than Sentinels. So it was pretty easy for them to make it to playoffs after Sentinels lost, but they still barely made it, which could be an argument for Sentinels being above G2. I think these teams are pretty close right now. G2 won the matches that they had to this year, beating Evil Geniuses at the start of the split and beating MIBR and Furia, but they didn't do super well against the top teams, so I felt like I couldn't really put them higher despite they are technically in the top 6 in the standings. But they did enough to make it to playoffs, and they did show pretty good performances here and there during the split, and the expectations weren't as high as they were for Sentinels or Energy, so it felt like 7. It's a good spot for them, but I could see them dropping lower. I do hope this team does well in playoffs. Moving on to a team that barely missed playoffs, we have Evil Geniuses at number 6. This is up one spot from after Super Week, and I felt like Evil Geniuses ended their split very well. They ended their split by upsetting both Sentinels and Energy, basically ruining both of those teams' playoff chances. They had a really rough beginning of the split, but they looked quite dangerous by the end of it, and Giacomo had a really bad start to the split, but he looked like he was just on an absolute tear. That one play against Energy on Ascent to win it, oh my god. This team I do feel like isn't gonna do as much damage as the EG roster did last year, but I still feel like with Potter, with Giacomo, there is something to build off of here, and they could see themselves in playoffs in the next stage, and we could see them at Champions. It's not impossible. But I felt like I couldn't have them in the top 5, and them missing playoffs is a factor in that, but they are still playing pretty well. So again, it's going to be very interesting for them in stage 2. Moving on to number 5, our biggest mover up, a team that looked down and out. We have Loud at number 5. Loud did not look very good at the beginning of the split. It just seemed like every Brazilian team was just struggling to find much of anything. But then Loud ended up beating Sentinels, getting their revenge from the amount of times that Sentinels have beat them this season, and then ending the split on a pretty dominant win against G2, nearly allowing Sentinels to get into playoffs. Loud looked pretty rough early on, but they have since recovered. I think this team is starting to play like they were at kickoff. They look really good. Going hot into playoffs is a good sign for them, so we'll see what this team ends up doing. It's not going to be easy for them to make it to Shanghai, but I do think it's possible. Moving on to our top 4, down one spot, mainly just because of other teams passing them, but we have C9 at number 4. So C9 were in the top 3 last time I did a power rankings, and there was a bit of discussion on that, but I felt like they were playing well. C9 then lose to 100 Thieves, which helps 100 Thieves move up, but we'll get to them later. And then they have a game against Furia where they lose a map, nearly getting 13-0'd, which was a very, very concerning thing. But I give them a bit of a pass on that because they just don't seem to win first maps very often. They end their split against MIBR, finally winning a first map and looking pretty dominant in that, albeit against a pretty easy team. So I don't give them much credit for winning against either of those Brazilian teams. So I do move them down one, mainly just because of who's passing them, but they are still playing well. I just don't know if what I've seen from C9 is going to be sustainable in the long run. But do they have a good chance of making Shanghai? Yeah, kind of. They actually are in a pretty good spot, so we'll see how that goes. Kicking off our top 3, we have 100 Thieves at 3rd. So 100 Thieves moved down one spot from where they were after Super Week on my power rankings. They did end up losing to Crew, which was a very crazy match. And then they ruined Energy's playoffs hopes by pretty much stomping them on that second map and having a very good win on the first map as well. So 100 Thieves, they are playing really good. That loss against Crew does help Crew move up. So they basically just got passed. And 100 Thieves, I do like their chances at playoffs, but they're playing Loud. Loud is going to be a tough out, despite the fact that they've been struggling throughout this split. So do not underestimate this team. This team has a lot of experience and consistency throughout their time in Valorant. So for 100 Thieves, it is an uphill battle for them, but I do think this team has the talent to do some damage in those playoffs, and if they make it to Shanghai, that'd be really fun. It's been a while since we've seen 100 Thieves in an international tournament, so I'd be very happy if we end up seeing that. Moving on to our top 2, so which team is at number 2, which team is at number 1? Kicking it off, we have Crew at number 2. Crew have been playing incredibly well this split. They end up going into that match against Leviathan going undefeated. They then, of course, lose that match. So that match basically just decided the order of the top 2. Crew look really dangerous. I do kind of worry for them in playoffs. They haven't been in playoffs in quite some time. The last time they were in that kind of situation was LCQ last year, which they did win. And it seems like this team is tired of all the losing that they did last year and wants to really prove people that they can be a top team again. Don't forget, Crew in 2021, they were a pretty good team. It's been a long time since we've seen Crew really just take it to other teams, and I'm very glad it's finally happening. But I don't see them as the top team in Americas, mainly because of their Latin American rival in Leviathan. Leviathan look absolutely fantastic. Aspas, I think, is clearly the best player in the world right now. Nobody is putting up the numbers that he's putting up. He is just getting frags left and right. You cannot stop this man. It seems basically impossible. And that's not to say that the rest of the team is doing bad either. We've seen Kane have an incredible split. We have seen Com and Tex both bounce back. And Mazzino doing his job. So everything for Leviathan is looking up. If you're a fan of this team, you should be very happy with their performance. But it is possible that this team, riding maybe a bit too high, gets upset in playoffs. But they only need one win to make it to Shanghai. So if they can just get that one win, they're there, and it doesn't even matter if they end up losing the other 2 matches that they can potentially play. It does not matter. But right now they look like the best team. They do have a very good chance of making it to Shanghai, and they should be able to beat whoever they face. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. I am excited to see what this team does, and it's been a long time since we've seen, I don't think this has ever happened, at least in the franchise league. We have never seen 2 Latin American teams at the top, the only 2 Latin American teams. If you want to still call Leviathan a Latin American team, I know Zeph Valorant, shout out Zeph, he doesn't see this team as a Latin American team anymore in Leviathan because they have like, what, 1 Latin American player, 2 Latin American players? So it doesn't really count, but the org's there, so we can call it that, I guess. Either way, it is great to see. It is cool to me when we see, new teams come up as top teams because, we haven't really had any consistent kings of Valorant so far this year. Looked like Sentinels were going to be that, and then they have a rough split, so I do think they can recover that. Anyways, those are my power rankings heading into playoffs. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your personal rankings? How do you think playoffs are going to go? Please click like if you enjoyed this video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.